Welcome to Inspired Edinburgh. Powerful conversations helping you reconnect with your purpose. I'm Elliot Reeves and my guest today is Marvin Reid. Marvin is a senior occupational therapist and founder of Chill Winston UK, an organisation that works with boys and men to give them the tools to become more emotionally resilient. You're a speaker, a vlogger, a podcaster and a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioner. Marvin, it's incredible to have you here. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, man.
You're absolutely welcome.
Absolute delight to be here.
Great. It was so much fun spending some time with you yesterday and going deep in conversation, as I expect we will do once again.
Yeah.
This time the cameras are rolling, so it's great stuff.
Yeah, this conversation started last night.
Essentially. Yeah. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
So I think the best place to start is for a bit of context.
Yeah.
You know, who is Marvin Reid?
That's me. So who is Marvin Reid? Interesting question. So I'm a 41-year-old man, born in Reading, in Berkshire, brought up in Berkshire, come from a big family, big supportive family, and as a child loved playing outdoors, spent a lot of time with cousins, summer holidays in Cornwall. Great upbringing. I feel very, very grateful. I've had a wonderful upbringing.
It's always a tricky curveball question. That
it really is. Yeah.
And that's why I suppose I enjoy asking it, because it does kind of prompt people to kind of reflect a little bit on, who am I? It's interesting, and I do like seeing people's responses. I suppose, you've given a bit of context around sort of where you grew up. How would you describe what you were like? How did you fare in the education system, and what I suppose were your kind of early aspirations when you were growing up?
Okay, so I guess as a young boy, I was quite playful. I was a bit of a joker, and that's still in me.
Yeah,
it's definitely still in me, and I love that. And the interesting thing is that as I've become a man, and particularly over the last sort of 10 years, as I've started to, which I'm sure we'll talk about as we move through, but as I've started to unravel the knots and start to become more of a man, in a strange way, the boy has come back through, So as a young boy, I used to spend a lot of time with my mum in the kitchen, watching her cook and bake, and I think that's where I get my love for cooking and baking from. And at school, some of the subjects that I loved were like geography, history, biology. I've got a big passion for the natural world and conservation. As a young lad, I was obsessed with snakes, and I was very, very lucky that my mum and dad let me keep them. And I don't know how I convinced them, because I had to keep frozen rodents in the freezer.
Really?
I'm like, who lets their child do that? But my mum and dad were, they used to really, really encourage us, me and my brothers and my sister, to do the things that were really important to us, and really supported us with that. So I loved, when I was a young lad, I loved to study, I loved to read, I loved to learn about the world and all the different countries that were out there, and that sort of, I guess, lit my desire and my passion to want to go to these countries and go to these national parks, and to go to these places where this wildlife, these animals were, that I was so fascinated by. At school, and so that was my younger years, and then as school started to roll through and I started to become an older child, I started to become a bit more mischievous. Because I guess that I didn't like being told what to do or being told what I had to be interested in. And I think for any, particularly getting towards adolescence and teenage years, it's a difficult time for many children, for many a child, and there's hormonal stuff changing, and so it's all going off. And then I started to become more interested in like making people laugh and getting thrown out of class, and then pulling faces when I was out there. Because I don't think I was stimulated.
Is that?
I don't think I was stimulated. Yeah. And emotionally, I had a lot of stuff going on, So, like many of us do, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I saw a really interesting article, actually, in doing a little bit of research, that you worked in IT. before you transitioned into the work that you're currently doing. I didn't realise that. What was the sort of career path and trajectory that you were on when you left school?
Okay, so when I was doing my GCSEs, I just wanted to get them done, and I wanted to finish because, you know, I was at that age where I was very much interested in just going out with my mates, and I was discovering music, and then of course, you know, as young, like teenager lads, suddenly we're faced with girls as well, and we're like, oh my God, who are you? And now I have to try and impress you. And you're hanging with all your mates, and so I was much more interested in, I need to make money, I need to earn money, and I wanted to earn money. So I wanted to get a job. So what happened was, when I was doing my GCSEs, I was working as a Saturday boy in a hairdresser's.
Really?
And then the opportunity opened up to get an apprenticeship as a hairdresser. So I left school, did an apprenticeship as a hairdresser. Started to party quite a lot, and then did my qualification as a hairdresser, which I enjoyed. I met some really, really cool friends that are still some of my friends now, and we had great, you know, I mean, blimey, you know, we would go out on a Friday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and actually come into the salon on a Saturday, have not slept at all.
Wow.
And then of course you're working as a Saturday person, it makes it even worse because there are mirrors everywhere. So you're trying to just keep your head together, and you're like, oh my God, there's mirrors everywhere, how am I gonna? So, you know, that makes you resilient.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then there's a transitional point, I think, for any apprentice, where you're qualified in what you do, but you're getting paid quite minimal money. You've got these skills, you know you can do it, and then you've got to wait for a little while before you can start earning decent money. And I wasn't interested in that. I just wanted to earn money. So I became a barber because I could start earning money. I left barbering in the end. I started to do some odd jobs in sort of warehouses and stuff like that. And then I got a job in advertising sales. And I did a couple of jobs in advertising sales, and then and because I was working in sales, I then fell into IT sales, and it sort of went from there, really. I met some friends. A friend of mine was working in IT sales. He introduced me to this job. I got a job, and then I fell into this. The first job was a place called Aslan, which was an IT distributor, and I met lots and lots of friends there. And I worked there at a really crucial point, I think, maybe in the IT industry. And this particular company, there was so many young people working in there, so many of my friends, over space of a couple of years. We had the best time ever. Like, we were all making good money, we were all partying quite a lot, and it was just some of my best memories. So that's how I ended up in IT.
Yeah.
And then from there, I got to a point when I was working in IT where I was like, this is financially rewarding, but it's not flicking my switch. And I would have been in my mid-20s. And I was like, I really, you know, I'm loving the vibe, I'm loving the partying, I'm loving the money, but I'm sitting here and I felt like I was selling my soul. And there was stuff, I knew that I needed to do something more. I wanted to contribute, I wanted to do something a bit more creative, but I didn't know what it was. So what I did was I saved up lots of money, and I went traveling around the world for a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's the IT. That's where I got to with the IT.
Yeah.
That's
really interesting. I think that's quite a kind of big realization for someone at that age, to realize that wasn't the path that they wanted to pursue. Was there anything specific that triggered that?
Maybe I was partying a bit too hard.
Right.
No, I think that I think that because when I was a young lad, I had all these interests. Like, I was always interested in conservation and wildlife, and I always thought that maybe I'd become a vet or I'd work with animals. And then at the same time, I was interested in like biology, and I was also interested in anatomy and psychology and human beings, and music. And I just felt that I had to do something different. You know, I had to do something different. I guess then I didn't. I mean, I'm 41 now, so I was so different then. I was a child, you know.
Yeah.
I knew something was up, but I didn't know what. I didn't know how to make sense of it. But I just knew that I had to do something different. And I guess what I did was I created the space, and everybody was going away. it was quite fashionable to go away and go travelling, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my best friends, we talked about it. What actually triggered it is we went to London Zoo for the day, me and this dear friend of mine, and we had a great day, and we were like, man, we need to go away travelling. You know, I was like, I want to go to some of these national parks, and we said, let's just do it. And we made a commitment driving back that we would do it, and we would book a ticket. And we just booked the ticket, and then that was it.
Really?
The rest sort of unravelled from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at what stage then did you decide to pursue occupational therapy?
Okay.
And I suppose in line with that, where did you discover your passion for yoga?
So my passion I found yoga before I went travelling.
Okay.
In that a female friend of mine took me to a local yoga class. I think me and another dear friend, and I was like, I didn't even know what it was. And my mum had talked about it before, and I was like, I sort of knew what it was, and I was playing a bit of football at the time, and I was quite active. And I thought, I'll go and check it out. And I went to this yoga class, and this first yoga class I went to, this lady, Sylvia Smith, she's no longer with us, but she was my first yoga teacher and very, very dear to me, a wonderful woman who had a profound impact on my life. But when I went to this first class, I remember just like sitting there and lying there and doing all these poses, and most of the time I was looking over at my friend, laughing and like, you know, like pulling faces at him, you know, and just being an idiot, you know. But at the end of the class, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I felt so relaxed. And what I will say is this, you know, as a young man, what I used to do, which a lot of my friends did, and you know, a lot of people around them, was, you know, we used to smoke a lot of weed. That's what we used to do to chill out. You know, it's what I'd whack on the Bob Marley and reggae and music, and that was one of the things I used to do to chill out with my friends. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I feel so relaxed, but I'm not stoned. But I felt so relaxed in a really clear way. Yeah. Like I was switched on cognitively, and I felt grounded. I felt alive, and I was like, hang on, this feels a bit magical, and it's that first, I think for many people who do yoga for the first time, meditation, they have that first experience they have is pretty profound. And I hear a lot from people, you know, I had the best night's sleep I've ever had in my life. And I think I had the best night's sleep. And I was like, wow, there's something in this. So anyway, then I went away traveling. And when I went traveling, I did a bit of yoga leading up to traveling. I kept going back to this class. Interestingly, what happened is that I go to yoga and I go with a couple of different friends, a couple of male friends, and we'd go, and then we'd come back from yoga and we'd sit and we'd have a couple of glasses of wine and just have really interesting conversations. We'd talk about all sorts of stuff. It wouldn't just be like a couple of lads sitting there just chatting about the stuff that lads talk about. We'd start to ask, we'd find ourselves engaged in conversation when we're asking all sorts of questions. And looking back at it now, that's probably where it started to happen. You know, it's like the unfolding. When I went traveling, I enrolled on this 3-month yoga course, and I stayed in this ashram and lived and sort of went to all the lectures and followed the diet, and that's where I really started to get the door opened a bit more with yoga, and I was like, okay, this is what this stuff is pretty powerful, and started to get a real taste for it.
What's your yoga of choice then?
My yoga of choice now?
Yeah.
I don't even know what to call it.
Really?
Because I think the problem with calling it something is that it becomes restrictive.
Okay.
And I think that for me, my yoga of choice now is I just roll my mat out and I just move and I breathe. That's it.
Really?
I put some music on. Could be anything. You know, first thing in the morning, it could be anything. I might put a bit of Aretha Franklin on, or a bit of jazz, or even a bit of real soulful drum and bass. And I just close my eyes and I just move and I breathe, you know, and that's it. And
so does it most resemble like Ashtanga or like Kundalini type, or is it?
I think that, I mean, I guess my yoga is probably influenced by, I like restorative yoga and yin yoga, where sometimes if I've had quite a stressful day in my job as an OT, I need to totally yield and like plug myself back in. So I'll just lay there over a bolster with an eye bag, or I'll do some positions where I can just totally go inside and just, you know, really go to a different level of relaxation and switch off. And my more dynamic practice would probably look like, well, it's influenced by many things. It's probably influenced by my jiu-jitsu practice. It's influenced by dance. Probably influenced by Ashtanga. But I find it difficult to define, maybe because I've had so many influences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that specifically, but I felt as though I kind of needed to dig a little deeper and find out. Awesome. Sorry to derail you.
No,
You were telling us more about the yoga and the journey
Yeah.
to occupational therapy.
So the journey into occupational therapy, what happened is that when I was away traveling totally was such a big game changer for me and totally opened me up, because I'd been away a few times on holiday, and I feel very fortunate because my parents as children took us away quite a lot to Mediterranean destinations, but they took us to Brazil when we were younger as well, and that was a massive eye opener as a young child, and it was beautiful for me because I'd always wanted to go somewhere like that, Going away traveling. And being able to go to, I started in India, and having such a fascination with the wildlife of India, particularly the tiger conservation is a real big love of mine. But having the opportunity to be able to go to some of the wildlife sanctuaries and the tiger reserves, I've never had such. It was the most profound experience I had to date at that time, where I always remember it. Being in a jeep and going into Ranthambore Tiger Reserve at sunrise and sitting there, and I didn't actually get to see a tiger on my first safari, and many people don't because they're so elusive, and many people who are out in the wildlife photographers might not see one for years, But it was just being there and being in the tiger's habitat and seeing all the scenery and the fauna and hearing the sounds and the smells and being there and being like, oh my God, I've waited for this all my life. I've known that I was always supposed to have come here, and here I am right now, and I've created this, and it gave me a really beautiful experience inside. And then of course the conversations with people, meeting people from all over the world and sitting there, and many people I'm sure that maybe backpack for the first time, get to experience that, because I'm like, I've only been immersed in British culture. I don't know anything else. So suddenly you're in a big circle of people, and you've got someone from Canada there, and from New York, and from Stockholm, and from Berlin, and from Israel, and you're having a big conversation, and suddenly someone's asks you a question. Well, you ever thought about this? I'm like, well, no. Why would I have thought about that? And it's just such an eye-opener. And I always remember particular conversations about studying. And for me, I always thought to myself, well, if we study, it's only ever going to it's going to lead to something vocational. I didn't ever think that we should study because we're interested in something. But through these conversations that I was having, it was like, well, actually, we study because we're interested in something. Yeah. And we can study until the day that we die. We don't. And that really opened me up. And I guess the reason I mentioned that to you is because you asked about occupational therapy. And I always knew that I needed to change career. I was in my late 20s, and even then I thought, I was mid-late 20s, I thought to myself, oh my God, I can't change career now because I'm getting old, and but looking back on it now, I was still very young, I'm still very young now. But that was huge. I was like, oh my God. And then of course you get all these book recommendations, and it just opens you up. Yeah. It's suddenly you tune into a different frequency. You've been listening to stuff on medium wave, and then you're on FM. Yeah. And backpacking gave that to me. And I'm sure there are many things, that will give people that experience. But I think many people talk about travel in that way. Yeah. Travel is can open you up on so many levels. And it did that for me big time. And then, of course, that it sows that seed, that love is always there. And essentially, to cut a very long story short, I've got a tendency to waffle. No, I love hearing it, honestly. It's brilliant. I'd take as long as you need to answer questions. Okay, thank you. So when coming towards the end of this trip, this experience, I knew that coming back I had to do something else. And I guess I have to, you know, give immense gratitude to my girlfriend at the time, who I was with, who I was travelling with, who sort of encouraged me to go and study, and to explore explore anything that I was interested in, that I loved. So I came back with that. That I could do that. But the interesting thing is that I was coming back into, I guess, a culture and a mindset that was, you either leave school and you find someone and you settle down and you buy a house, you know, and you get a mortgage, you know, and that's it, and you just spend all that time in that career, or you go to university, but you better know what you're going to do because you do your GCSEs and your A levels, and then you've got to make your mind up.
Yeah.
You've got to make your mind up. You've got to go and do a degree, and then you know. And actually, it was interesting because in conversations that I had, particularly with people from Scandinavia, and they talk about, they go to gymnasium, their equivalent of A levels, I think, right? And then they are encouraged to take a couple of years out before they go to university. So you get lots of people at that age, in that age bracket, from Scandinavia travelling. And I love that idea. I was like, wow, that's amazing. It's like you're encouraging adults, like parents and uncles and aunts, and you know, their lecturers and their teachers are saying, go away, take some time out, or take a couple of years to work. Try and get a sense of what you want to do.
I do really like that. I think that in modern times it's maybe become a bit cliche to take a gap year and just kind of travel, but I think that if you're doing it in the pursuit of finding yourself and learning more about who you are, I think that's brilliant. You know, I really like that.
Yeah, it was the first time that I'd ever heard that, and I guess that gave me. I was like, okay, this is possible, you know. But I had to come back into that. It's always a difficult transition, I think, for a lot of people. They'll talk about that when they go away for traveling for however long, and they come back into their life, because they do come back a different person. You've got to come back in and put an old coat on that doesn't fit, or an old pair of shoes, and you're like, this doesn't quite fit. Of course, you come back as a different person, you know, but you're coming back into the same relationships, and you might be able to. The transition might be a bit smoother, maybe with people that have been away traveling. Or, you know, I don't know. It was a difficult time for me. And
so when you returned, did people round about you, do you think they noticed a change in you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I came back and I was massively unsettled. I was really, really unsettled, because I had, you know, so when I was away, and I met a girl, and we sort of got together, and she was in a different country, and I came back to the UK, and then I came back with you know, this, oh my God, I've been away traveling and I've just had the most profound and most amazing experience, and I don't want to go back into my job as in IT sales. I want to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. And that was really difficult. And it's just, you're like, oh my God, I don't know who I am. I don't know, blimey, where do I fit? And it doesn't feel, you've been away and you've not been having to try and fit, because you're away from your friends, you're away from your family, you're away from jobs, you're away from everything that's tied to your identity. When you're away traveling, you're like, you take this big breath. I remember once, I'll tell you something, a very, very short story. I had a moment when I was traveling, and I remember sitting on a camel, and I gave this camel the name Emil. I named him after Emil Heskey, who used to play for Liverpool. And I was on this camel, I was with a big group of friends, group of girls and guys that we met who were from Australia, very dear friend of mine, a couple of dear friends of mine, and we went on a camel safari in the Great Thar Desert. So the Great Thar Desert being one of the desert that separates part of India and Pakistan. So we went on this camel safari for a couple of days, and by day we'd be out on the camels, you know, and I'd have my mini disc player on, and there was a moment where I was on my camel, and what we'd be doing is we'd be going around the camels, passing the odd joint around, so we'd be getting stoned, and I had some Bob Marley on, and I was smoking a joint, and I was on my camel, and I looked out, and it was a Tuesday morning, and I thought, holy fuck, I'd usually be at work now. It was just one of those moments, and I'm surrounded by all these amazing people, some of my best friends and some of my new friends, and I was like, it was just such an eye-opener. And here I am on this camel, And where am I? It was just amazing. Yeah, it's one of those moments. Sorry, I've gone off track a bit.
No, it's great.
I was going to come back to the coming back to the UK after the trip abroad, the trip travelling. Yeah, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I still had no idea what I wanted to do.
Occupational therapy is quite niche.
Yeah.
I didn't know what an occupational therapist was a few years ago.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to choose that?
Not many people know what an occupational therapist is. I
Really?
mean, if you ask an occupational therapist what is an OT,
Yeah.
they will struggle to answer the question because it's so broad.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ask me how would I describe what it is? What was your question?
Oh, sorry. The question was really just, I suppose, what made you decide that that was the thing you wanted to pursue?
Okay.
How did it come into your kind of radar?
So I got to a point where when I came back and I was unsettled and I was trying to make sense of what I wanted to do, I got to a point where I could have gone to study zoology and worked in conservation or something like that.
Yeah.
And that felt like a huge risk. And it probably was a little bit. And looking back on it now, it wasn't. But I wouldn't change it for the world.
Mm-hmm.
I was very interested in conservation and wildlife and music, and I just thought to myself, okay, I'm going to leave those two as hobbies, and I've got this other thing that I'm really interested in, which is psychology and anatomy and human beings and healing and health and well-being and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, maybe that's what I'll do, because and then from that I thought, well, do I want to study to be a physio, or do I want to study to be a nurse, or do I want to study to be a doctor? So those were the things that I was looking at. And then I remember there was one evening that I went to my local gym. I was a member of a Homes Place, they were then bought out by Virgin Media, Virgin Active.
Mm-hmm.
So I rocked up, and I always remember going into the jacuzzi, and there was a friend of mine, and she was sat in the jacuzzi, and we sat next to each other, and we started having a chat and catching up. And I said, what do you do again? Remind me what you do. She goes, well, I'm an OT. And I said, all right, what's that? And she started to describe what it was. And I thought, oh, actually, that sounds really cool. I'm going to look into that. And then she gave me the name of the admissions tutor at Brunel University, who was involved in the intake for occupational therapy, the Bachelor's of Science in Occupational Therapy. And I gave this guy, Chris Bailey, a call, and then it all went from there. And I was just like, yeah, this sounds great. It sounded like a mixture of psychology and physiotherapy.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, let's do this.
And how long have you been doing it now?
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but from that wasn't, I suppose, the end of the journey. I suppose there never really is an end as such. Chill Winston. How did that come about?
It's really interesting when I get asked this question, I know that I'm on the right track because I feel something come alive in me.
Yeah.
Which I'm so grateful for.
Uh-huh.
How did Chill Winston come about? So Chill Winston started, I mean, if people would have asked me this question a couple of months ago or even a year ago, I would have to really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, well, it came about because I was trying to find a name for my yoga business, and I wrote on my flip chart Chill Winston, and I kept coming back to it. And then I worked with my friend who's into branding and stuff like that, and through her and her friend, they helped me create it. But that's not really how it came about. Chill Winston came about really through my childhood experiences. That's where it came from. That's where the bottom of the fire is. It's where it is, and it's only through becoming a man and where I am now that I'm able to look back and see. There's a quote from Steve Jobs that I always come back to, and I never really understood what he meant, and I really feel that I understand what he means now, is that we can't connect the dots through looking forward, only back.
Such a good quote.
And it's so true, man.
Love it, yeah.
It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I feel about this. Because I look back and I think, what is the driver behind my work for Chill Winston? And it all started with childhood, my wonderful and powerful and difficult childhood experiences.
It's interesting because we didn't really cover, I suppose, in the introductory part. I'm interested, I suppose, to hear what some of the kind of challenges in your not your upbringing necessarily, but growing up for you. What were kind of the challenges, and how have they fed into what you're now doing?
Well, I mean, I'd like to start firstly by saying I had the most amazing upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
I really did. You know, I'm so grateful. So I have a wonderful family, and we're so close. You know, and I so essentially, to cut a very long story short, when you go right back to the source, so my mum met my biological father, and I think in the mid-70s, I was born in 1976. They weren't together that long. I turned up, yeah, and then my mum and dad separated. And then my mum met someone else when I was maybe about a year, and then who became my father and brought me up.
Mm-hmm.
And then through that we started this family where my mum and dad had a little girl and two more boys, so my sister and my two younger brothers. So there's 6 of us in this family unit, and we all brought up together in this beautiful environment, and it was wonderful. And I suppose what's led me on my sort of identity work, mm-hmm. and making sense of who I am as a man, has been, there came a point, I guess, where my mum and dad had to tell me that actually I had a biological father, which happened around the age of 10.
Okay.
So I guess that's where I'm not gonna use the words traumatic, because I think that's because people have traumatic childhoods, but it definitely had an impact. Mm. It had an impact at the time, an emotional impact, a big emotional impact, but it had a beautiful impact because it became the fire and the catalyst to become who I am now. Yeah.
Who is that?
Who is that? Wow, that's a big question, isn't it? You fucker.
Yeah, you set yourself up for that, Marvin.
I did, didn't I?
Walked right into that one.
What I'm going to do is I am going to answer that, but I'm going to answer it in this way.
Okay.
I think that I became this guy through because I had basically had 2 separate families, so as a child, as a 10-year-old, had to try and make sense of that. And what happens is, in my experience, and the reason I talk about this is because I think it's important to, and it might be useful for anyone else out there who's going through something similar. Mm-hmm. Or people might be able to make a connection to it, because I think many young people have issues with identity, like, who am I? Where do I fit in the world? Teenagers do anyway. And I imagine, and I had a conversation with another friend of mine who's from mixed race background, and we were having the same conversation, like identity was a big issue for her. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was very much about, right, so I don't know who I am. Okay, so I'm brought up with a British and sort of white family, and that's who I am. I'm British, but now I've been introduced to this West Indian family, and I don't even know what that means, and I don't even know who I'm supposed to be. So then what you do as a child is that your interest as a child is just you're trying to present yourself in a way that enables you to be loved and not left and not abandoned. Now, even though there was never, ever, ever any messages that I was ever going to be abandoned, that is something that you have as a child. Mm-hmm. That's what you do. Mm. You're spinning plates. You're like, who do I have to be? And that's when you start putting all these masks on, mm-hmm. And it was like, you're going back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. So that's when, for me, I think as an individual, I started to put all these layers up and really become quite fixated in, when I met anyone, I didn't even know I was doing it. It was like, okay, who do you want me to be? You know, and this is how I have to present myself to you in order to be accepted. And the journey of getting to where I am now has been, it's been like an unpicking, an unraveling, peeling away the layers, and almost like a rescuing of that child again, who's buried under rubble that I put there, and pulling him out and saying, who are you? Who are you then? You know, and wow, it's great to meet you. And then with that, he becomes the man becomes him, you know, because that boy is always part of the man's always part of the boy.
Jeez.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. It's incredibly deep.
It is, isn't it?
How do you...
You asked the question.
I know. How do you then leverage your own personal experience in order to help young boys that may be going through something similar?
I guess because I've had to do the work. It's not to become anyone or to become someone that I wasn't. It's just to get to a space where I am enough.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a mantra that so many people have. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. I have to, in order to be accepted, I have to present myself in a way to the world that enables me to be accepted. And that's bullshit. It's bullshit. You know, we are enough. And I guess for me, you know, like I'd never be able to sit here and have a conversation like this because I'd always be thinking, what will so-and-so think and what will so-and-so think? And now I don't care. I don't say that in an egotistical or blasé way.
No, not at all. Yeah.
I'm saying it from in here because I accept myself, and I accept myself as I am, and I'm just speaking from here and in here. You know, I talk from my gut and here, and less from here, less analysis and trying to make sense of it and work it all out. And I guess because I'm not saying for a moment that, I mean, when I think about my work with young teenage lads and men, I'm not sitting here and saying I'm an expert and you know, and because blimey, I ain't been around that long. I'm only 41, but because of the journey that I've been on, and because of who I was and who I've become, and the unraveling, and you know, I've experienced it, and it's in my bones. You know, so I can say I'm an expert. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I've been there and done it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it ends. You know, it's ongoing. And I imagine that for many people that have been through any type of quite profound and an experience that's been going on for many years, they would. And so what's enabled me to get to that is having a wonderful, supportive family. Amazing friends, and lots of psychotherapy, lots of counselling, which I'm a huge advocate of, and I will talk about it in this way that you know, why do we get so obsessed with the gym? And don't get me wrong, I'm massively into movement and physical activity, but we're so focused on that, and we don't spend enough time thinking about, you know, going to the gym for our mind and for our emotions, and that's all psychotherapy and counselling is. We don't need to have a particular acute issue or something we're working through. And I've spent many years in psychotherapy, and that's enabled me to unpick a lot of this stuff and get out of my own way.
Yeah.
You know, and just actually, it's always been there. It's just like you're stepping from out of all the stuff that you've built up, and then, oh, hello, I'm here. I've always been here.
Yeah.
It's me. You know, and actually, it's like all you do is you say to the world, here I am, this is who I am, I'm okay, I know I'm okay. And then the feedback you get from the world is, you are okay, we quite like you actually. Yeah. Rather than, because the thing is, you know what it's like, if you sit with someone and you talk to them when you're with someone, and you can tell if they're a little bit, we can all be unsure of ourselves. I'm not saying that I'm not, sometimes I'm not sure of myself. But when we sit with someone, they're unsure of themselves, it's almost as if we want to say, oh, it's okay. You know, we can sense they feel a bit uncomfortable in their own skin. I was going somewhere with that, but I don't know where. But if it's important, it'll come back.
Great stuff.
I'm just going to let it go. There you go.
So What about things like meditation, yoga, maybe even jiu-jitsu in the sort of exploration of self? Have they kind of helped you uncover who you are to any extent?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. They've all been pretty profound tools for me, really. I mean, yoga, I always remember the first yoga class that I ever went to, Sylvia Smith, my first teacher who I was talking about. I always remember her saying, and I was lying there in a pose, fidgeting probably a bit too much, like, what's this all about, you know? And she said, let go, you know, just let go. And I remember thinking to myself, let go? What do you mean? Am I allowed to let go? You know, what happens if I let go? You know, won't everything fall apart? Or, you know, just the first time that someone tells you to relax, it's okay to relax. And that always stuck with me. And I think being a man as well, you know, being told that it's okay to relax, it's okay to let go, it's okay. And it's not just, it's not just being a man, it's just being a human being. It's like, got to have it all held together. And particularly, you know, I talk about being a Brit, you know, stiff upper lip, we got it locked down, you know, we're in control of this. And it's like, well, actually, no, it's okay to just go, don't know what's going to happen. Don't know. It's okay. And the profound power in being able to loosen our grip, and this, I see this massive connection with jiu-jitsu as well, in being able to loosen our grip and let go, and the space that opens up then. Because here's the thing, if we're always trying to have it all figured out, you know, it's like having a conversation, isn't it? It's like, you know, like when you're going into an important conversation or something you care about, it can become a bit scripted. Like, it's good to prepare, I think, but if we care about it, oh yeah, you know, this is what I want to say, and I want to say this, and I'll be honest, you know, coming into this interview, because I really care about my work, and because I care about the work you're doing, I was like, okay, I'm going to have this conversation with Elliot, and I've got things that I want to talk about, and I better not forget about this and this and this, because I care about my work, and I want to make sure that I want people to know about it. I want it to be useful to people, but we've got to let that go. You know, and it's sometimes, if we're too caught up in that, then it doesn't create space for expression and for creativity. And yoga has taught me how, I guess, has helped me to be able to do that, because you have no choice when you're on the yoga mat. You know, you come to the yoga mat and you face yourself. You know, when you slow down and you're quiet and you go inside, you know, I'm looking at the mirror there, but there's a mirror in front of you, and you see yourself. There's no bullshitting. It's you, and and in yoga you can run, because there are a lot of yoga classes where it's just dynamic. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this style of yoga, but it's a very bling type of yoga. It's not my bag. You know, hot yoga. I like a bit of hot yoga, but it's fashionable, and people go there in the particular outfits, and it's just, you know, bang, 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 bang. You're doing all these poses, and then right at the end of a yoga class, you'll do relaxation. We call it shavasana. And I've been in hot yoga classes, and I hear the teacher. I'm lying there. A teacher will say, "Okay, you've got 5 minutes to do some relaxation. If anyone wants to go now, you can go." And you hear loads of people rustling around with their bags and phones, and I'm always thinking, "What the fuck are you doing?" You know, this is telling you something, that if you have to jump up and leave now, you know, you're missing something, because I just think that people that are that active, you know, if they can't stop and be still, it's telling them something. That's their message, you know. And I see that when I teach restorative or yin yoga, you know, the more calming and slow and internal yoga, where you hold poses for a long time. People rock up to that type of yoga, haven't done it before, and I can tell they're fidgeting when they come in, they're fidgeting in poses, they don't like it, it's pushing their buttons. And maybe right at the end, it's not a judgment of them at all. Right at the end, I'll ask them, how did you find it? And they'll be like, yeah, well, you know, it was all right, but it's not really my cup of tea. You know, I like my vinyasa, I like my more dynamic stuff. And I'm thinking, that's great, that's cool. But I'm also thinking, this is probably what you need to do more than anything else, because you are running. You're probably doing this in your life, and you're running. You know, we need to find that balance. And just to sum up, with jiu-jitsu, it's exactly the same, I feel, because in jiu-jitsu, I mean, for me, I'm only a blue belt. I say I'm only a blue belt. I'm not. I'm looking down at you see that?
Yeah.
That's my, the arm is being saved for the purple and the brown and the black. And that will take however long it takes, maybe 60, 70. It doesn't matter. The belts are not important. But when you're a white belt, I remember being a white belt and like rocking up and, you're just trying to win and you gas out, you blow yourself out because all you're trying to do is you're trying to get the better of the person that you're sparring with or you're rolling with. Whereas what you learn to do, one of the first things that you learn as a blue belt is that you've got to relax. You've got to relax because it's actually through relaxing that you conserve your energy, and it's actually through relaxing, I feel, that you start to get a sense of the other person's body, proprioception. Like you can close your eyes, and you know where their body is, you know where your body is in space. And sometimes we do rolling drills where we're sparring, blindfolded, and I love it because sometimes when I'm blindfolded and I roll better than I ever would with my eyes open, because then I'm not thinking about it, and you see it in Chi Sao and Kung Fu, I think I've seen a picture of Bruce Lee and his teacher, I think, Yip Man, and they're doing the sticky hands and they've got blindfolds.
Yeah.
And it's all like, look, get the mind out of the way, get the monkey mind out of the way, because this monkey mind is useful and it's a great tool, and let's use it, but let's not allow it to use us. And you know what? And I truly believe this, and I've seen this again and again and again. I think if we're going through a really, really stressful period of our lives, or we're going through, like a hurricane, life sometimes can come along and just smack us around the head, can't it? And knock us on the floor. It's at those points where we don't listen to our mind, because our mind can be obsessional, and it can get caught up in stuff. Like sometimes when you've got a lot of stuff going on, paranoia is the wrong word, it's a bit too strong, but you start to look into too much how other people are being. You're like, well, maybe they're being a bit funny with me because of this and because I've done this, this and this. The reality is, if you go and ask them, they're going to usually say to you, don't be ridiculous. No, it's not about that at all. But it just goes to show that sometimes this can run away from itself.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's really useful to use practices, whether it be jiu-jitsu, yoga, dance, music, I don't know, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Where you bring yourself into your body and you go, okay, I'm here, I'm back.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. It's funny, I was actually going to ask you in terms of advice for others and kind of disconnecting from the stresses of life, the speed that everything's going, technology. How do you go about doing that?
Well, how do I go about doing it? I mean, I know how to go about doing it, and the way that I can tell you what I teach people, but I would be lying if I said that I do it myself all the time. Because we live in a fast-moving world, and we're human beings, and actually we're apes, aren't we? And we get, it's like monkey, oh, monkey, oh, that's shiny, that's bright, I'm going back to it.
Yeah.
The flashing screens, there's just so much, isn't there? I would say for me, I think that disconnecting from technology is really important.
Yeah.
And I think that's massive, and I think particularly in the evenings, and I think this leads to sleep hygiene. I think sleep is massive. We don't have to talk about it too much because we know everybody's talking about it, and for good reason. But I think that when it comes to sleep, I think that having that, and I talk about this in my resilience workshops because I think it's so important, having that hour before we go to bed and not taking the tablet to the bed, not taking the phone to the bed. I do it sometimes. I do it because I'm like, wow, I just want to watch this YouTube video, or I just want to watch this podcast or whatever it is, And I'm like, I know this isn't good for me and my sleep, but I do it anyway. I think sleep is really important. I think that when it comes to really bringing your feet to the floor, I think that finding a daily breathing or meditation practice is massive. And it's an absolute game changer. And interestingly enough, on my way to come and see you, I was having a conversation with an Uber driver, and he was like, where are you going? I said, it's my first time in Edinburgh, and it's mad because I've got my grandfather Scottish, and like I'm here in Scotland for the first time. What's going on? And he said, so what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm going to be on this podcast, and this is what. And he said, what do you do for a living? And I said, I do this, this, and this. And he was like, oh, cool. He said, I meditate, and I use an app called Headspace. And I was like, oh my God. If anyone asked me, you know, if I could start anywhere, where would I start? And I say with Headspace. And I'm going to big up Andy Puddicombe and the guys at Headspace, because I think the work that they're doing and the work that they've done is amazing. And it very much, it feels like the sort of stuff that I'm trying to do with Chill Winston, in that Andy Puddicombe and his team had, well, him particularly, he had this idea. He was like, you know, he's a Buddhist monk and I love meditation. I can see how beneficial it is for the world. But, you know, sometimes when we present it to the world, people's barriers go up.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's too esoteric for me, or that's too woo-woo. And straight away the barriers go up and you are not getting through. And he's like, I know how powerful this is, and I want to share it with people. And how can I find a way to reach everybody?
Yeah.
Because it's a tool for evolution as human beings. And that's what he's done. That's what he's done, isn't he? I mean, he's done his TED talk, and he's got this beautiful app, and he's packaged it in a no-nonsense format for people. So Headspace, I say start there. Headspace is a great place to start.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me. It was an interview I did a while back actually with a Kundalini yoga specialist, and she spoke about the fact that, you know, we wash ourselves every day, we clean ourselves, but we don't cleanse our energy, the sort of spiritual side that we don't see and we're not as aware of, and the need to sort of do that. I listened to you on Rue Wickman's Shredded Brainiac podcast. You spoke a little bit about a morning routine. Is that something that you still do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think morning, definitely. Do you mean what meditation is a morning routine?
Yeah, meditation-wise, yeah. You basically say you've got like your meditation pillow, I think.
Yeah.
You put that down. It's a dark room.
Yeah.
You have your green tea and steam from that. Is that really what you still kind of do that stuff? Yeah.
I was smiling, man, because I went there. I was there. To close my eyes, I felt a bit zenned out. I was there. Yeah, and I think creating that, I mean, for me, creating that space is really important, like that.
Yeah.
Because I don't meditate every day. I need to, and when I don't meditate, I can feel it. And I've recently discovered a practice called transformational breath for a friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, Tanya Forgan, who introduced me to transformational breath. And actually next weekend I'm going on a 4-day course with them to do modules 2 and 3, and it's an absolutely stunning practice. It's difficult to explain, but essentially what it is, it's a really simple breathing technique that enables a drawbridge to come down between the conscious and subconscious mind, and there's a clearing, and every time you come out, I feel like you come out of a transformational breathing session of like 20 minutes. It's like what it might feel like to do, I don't know, like intense psychotherapy or bloody psychedelics or something like that.
Yeah.
It's mad. It's just, I remember when I was doing this transformational workshop, I did module 1, and every time I came out of a breathing session, I'd stand up and I'd look around, I'd look at me and the same girl, we'd because we were like next to each other, we'd look at each other and smile, and I'd go, holy fuck. Because it was such a transformational practice. So I'll do that. It's just basically lying there and you've got some music on and you're following the breath and doing some breath work. Or I'll sit there and do mindfulness of breathing. And I try and do that every day. And if I don't do some sort of stilling practice where I go inside and just get quiet, it just reconnect with the inner me, you know.
Yeah.
If I don't do that, something feels like it's missing. And it feels like I step out and I'm like, I just don't feel, it's like I haven't brushed my teeth. You know, and I think the whole thing about creating, it becoming like a ritual and creating the space is important. Like I would, you know, I'll put a candle on some essential oil, I'll get some matcha green tea or some oolong, and I'll get my cushion and I'll get my blanket. And these things, and setting up the environment, just remind my body and my mind and my spirit of what is about to unfold, I think. Setting the tone, do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Really good. Good stuff. Marvin, it's been brilliant finding out about you're such a fascinating guy. You're so deep. You speak from the heart. I just absolutely love it. It's honestly brilliant. At this stage, I'd like to go a little bit, I suppose, deeper and address some of the more kind of philosophical topics. The first of which is something that we've spoken a little bit about in the past as well, and it's purpose. At this stage, where you are in your kind of journey of life, what do you feel is your purpose?
Well, I always, it's a really interesting question, and purpose, sometimes when I hear that, I like it, it inspires me, but it also makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. Because when I think about purpose, for me personally, I think it's always changing. I don't like to think about it as being something that's stuck, because it's going to change. And I think one of the things with purpose, this is just my personal opinion, sometimes people get, if I was, someone might say, well, I'm trying to find out what my purpose is, and I haven't, blimey, you go into Waterstones and you look at the self-development section, and there are so many people who've written books about purpose, aren't they? Well, I'm going to read this next book, because this book, if I read it all the way through, it tells me I'm going to be able to work out what my purpose is. And people are like, I need to find my purpose, because until I find my purpose, then my life isn't complete. I don't know how we find our purpose, or I guess, for me and my purpose, what do I feel my purpose is right now? I feel I have a duty. And we talked about this last night, didn't we? And I feel that my work with Chill Winston, I feel that because of my, wonderfully colourful upbringing, and how that's the supportive environment and all the stuff that's happened to me in my life, that has created this depth and this desire to have an impact on male suicide in the UK, and that is my purpose. It's in my bones. I don't even have to think about it. It's not something that I think about here anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. I was always trying to work out what it was. What is it? Well, it might be that, and it might be that, and it might be this. I don't even have to think about it. I know what it is.
Yeah, that's quite a purpose.
Yeah, and I just want to have some sort of impact on it, and I feel that I can.
Yeah,
I feel that I can.
And how do you plan on going about that?
Well, I guess I feel that because of my journey in becoming more comfortable in my own skin as a man, and becoming more, and really realising the importance of talking about the way that I feel, and how that has enabled me to feel more comfortable in my own skin, and become more resilient, and actually to become more of a man, to become more of a complete man. I think because without it, we're not men. Because how the fuck can we relate to the world? How can we relate to other men? How can we relate to women? How can we relate to children? And I think that and it's bloody hard work. As men, it's the scariest thing we can ever do, talking about the way we feel. It's like, oh my God, don't want to do that. That's the heaviest amount of weight we're ever going to have to push. I think that I'm just trying to find the best. Sometimes with language, it's difficult, because we created language, didn't we? As human beings, we've created language to try and describe feeling, and I think sometimes feeling can get lost in language. So I always give myself time to pause, which is what I'm doing now. So I guess okay, this is it. I guess I feel in my work as an occupational therapist, for example, we have this thing that we call therapeutic use of self. And therapeutic use of self being that when we're working with someone, when we're working with a patient, the most important thing that we do is that we get on their level, because we need them to feel comfortable in dialogue with us, and comfortable in themselves, and comfortable in this relationship, this dialogue, this conversation. Because if they're comfortable, they can relax, and then they feel more comfortable about expressing how they really feel and talking about the real problems, the real things that they're having difficulty with. And then if they do that, we're able to help them. Because if they're not comfortable, they're not going to tell us, you know. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that my work with teenage boys and with men is I feel that I have one of my skills in the work that I do is I have I use therapeutic use of self I want to try and reach everybody. You know, the chaps on the building site, you know, the guys in IT sales, you know. I've worked in the corporate world, you know, my dad is a builder, you know, my uncles work in construction. I've worked in construction. I've worked on the building site with my dad, you know, I can go there, you know, and I think that as a grounded man, there are so many colours, aren't there? You know, and it's nice to be able to move in between all of them. And I guess that's the emphasis of my work. You know, I want to be able to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question? I feel like I've gone round the houses a bit.
No, not at all. One of the things that I think I'd like to kind of reference is your Instagram page. I think is absolutely brilliant. There's so many good quotes on that, and it's, I suppose, the idea of promoting vulnerability, which you do brilliantly, and the other thing is the idea that, you know, I'm an alpha male and I cry, or, you know, I'm in touch with my sort of feminine side, which in the modern society seems to be kind of taboo almost, that you shouldn't be like that, but actually you totally should be like that, because only by doing that is that you then feel comfortable relating to others, you understand yourself better, you feel better in your own skin, and it's probably something that has a direct impact on male suicide. Yeah. Yeah,
without a doubt.
And I mean, you see the number of sort of high-profile people. You got like Robin Williams, Chester Bennington recently committing suicide. It's just, it's terrible that people would feel so bad about themselves that they would want to take their own lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge issue in the UK. 6,000 people every year, and 75% of them are men. You know, and the really interesting thing is that, you know, if we look at the stats, you have roughly 3 times more women suffer with depression versus men, but then lots of men it's going to be unreported. I think there are just so many men, you know, that, I mean, you know what it's like as boys. You watch little boys, you know, you only have to watch little boys and look at them. I remember how I was as a little boy. I was like, you know, I was in the garden, I was playing with my mates, we were macho, we were doing masculine stuff, we had toy guns, we were rolling around in the mud, we were doing the stuff that maybe some of the girls weren't into as much. But at the same time, we were very sweet. You know, little boys are very sweet, they're very feminine. You know, they spend a lot of time with their mums, and that gets drummed out of them. Probably at like 5 or 6, when you first start hearing, don't cry. You know, be a big boy. You know, big boys don't cry, pull yourself together, you know that, all that stuff. Yeah. And then, of course, as children, what we're doing is we just want to be accepted, particularly by our parents and by our adults. And by the way, it's not a criticism of parents or adults, because they don't know what they're doing. You know, they're just trying to shape us into the best human beings possible. I mean, I guess I was very lucky, really. I don't think I didn't really. It wasn't necessarily. I don't feel it was drummed into me more than anybody else. But I just think society and, like, you know, school and then as you get older, as you become an older lad, and then you become a teenager, it's just there. It's everywhere, wherever you are. And then you get immersed in that pub culture and all that stuff, you know, and it's suffocating. It's absolutely suffocating, because the very idea or the thought of you displaying or expressing any degree of vulnerability, you don't even want to go there. And you know, it's impossible. You know, you cannot shut that down without shutting down your creativity. And you only have to have a look at the work from Brené Brown, who and she's an amazing woman, and she greatly influences my resilience work. The stuff I love about her work is it's evidence-based, of course. But you can't, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem.
I think that the work that you're doing to help kind of combat it, if you like, is absolutely brilliant. I honestly do. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it feels like my duty, it feels like my duty. And when I think about it, it makes me emotional.
Yeah.
So I think that's all I need to know.
Oh.
That's all I need to know. And I guess when I think about my work in schools, with teenagers, and when I think about myself at that life stage, I was so confused. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know. All I was interested in was fitting in, and fitting in with the coolest lads, and I just guess that what I really want to do is present tools to young lads at that age that are accessible to them, where it's not boring. And it's not like, oh, this is woo-woo or weird or this is not cool. Present it in a cool way and get their attention. And actually, you package it and you give it to them in a way that they can see the benefit. How is this gonna benefit me with my studies? How is this gonna benefit me with going out and meeting girls?
Yeah.
Because so many young teenage boys feel so awkward. They're not comfortable in their own skin. They're not. Their bodies are changing, going through puberty. They hate themselves. They feel so weird. They feel so isolated, So, and then of course for men as well, for many, many men, it's like, I hear about all this vulnerability stuff, but it's not my bag, it's a load of old nonsense. It's not, but it's like, well, actually, how is it going to make me a better father? How is it going to make me a better husband? How is it going to make me more effective at work? And how is it going to help me with negotiating the storms of life that we cannot get away from? We are going to get those uppercuts and those hooks, and usually we get 4 or 5 at once. And for many men, what it does is it puts them on their backside. They've never been shown, or they don't have the tools to be able to talk about the way they feel, and the very thought of that scares the life out of them. So what do? Is they usually turn to the bottle, and then it's just downhill. And and alcoholism, 3 times more higher in men than women, and that's interesting. Suicide rates 3 times higher, and it's a spiral. And something has to give, and we've got to start. This is why there are so many people having these types of conversations now. We've got to talk about it, because it's it's the biggest killer of men in the UK, bigger than cancer, heart disease, road traffic accidents. What the fuck? Why men killing themselves? It's awful. It's tragic. It's heartbreaking. Boys killing themselves. Little boys, teenage boys.
Wow. Looking forward, what do you think you would kind of like your legacy to be? How would you like to be remembered?
I'll tell you about this. It's really simple. Sometimes when I'm at home and I'm sat on the dinner table, when I go back for a family meal and I'm sat there and there's like me and my brothers and my sister, and there's my little niece, and there's 2 tiny little nieces now, 2 little girls, and we're all there, and it happens every now and again. We get together as a family, and then I look at my mum and dad, but I particularly look at my dad because I'm a man. I look at my dad and I'm like, and he sits there and he's always saying that, I can see it in him. He's like, it don't get much better than this. He's at the top table, he's at the top of Everest, and he's created that, and I think that's the same, I imagine, for many men, for many grandfathers, if that's their bag, that they have all their family around them and this is what they've created, And I think that, so I think to myself, God, I'd love that. I'd love to have that. So I think for me as a 41-year-old man, it's alive in me, in my heart, that I'd love to be a father. And I'd love to be a grandfather. And when that happens, I don't know. I'm not saying that I want to be a father now, right this second. I'm very much interested in continuing to grow Chill Winston and have a nice, strong foundation there that gives me the space to be able to do the little things like take my children to school, and be with them and spend time with them, really spend time with them. Because you never get that time back. But that's my legacy, and also I'd love, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I know it is, but I'd love to have a program that's rolled out in schools all over the UK. Yeah, you know, and that's a goal. That's a lot. I guess that's a long-term goal for me. That's you know, and I think that when we're setting goals, we make them big.
Yeah.
Set goals that scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, otherwise, you know what it's like. I mean, nothing ever big has happened for me when I haven't been scared and when I haven't felt uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. You know, and I haven't thought to myself, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. I've never done this before. Mm-hmm. You know, when you look at people that are doing something that you really admire, you know, how did they, you know, they didn't just suddenly do it. You know, they didn't just, there was a point where they didn't know how to do it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely.
So everybody starts at the same place. Mm-hmm. You know.
What does success look like for you? How do you define success?
I think for me, it's very personal to the individual. You know, so for me, it's like doing what you love, doing what you love. You know. And that might be that you spend time with your children, you know, and that you want to be the best father that you can be, or you want to be the best mother that you can be, or that you're a carer and that you take care of a family member and you nurse them in bed, or that you want to build a business, or I don't know, it could be anything. Yeah, that's what success is. Very, very individual. It's person-centered. You know. Might be that you break your the amount of bevies that you're able to go through on an all-dayer. You know, could be. I don't know. You know what I mean? Maybe. Each to their own, I guess. Yeah.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
There are two pieces of advice that stand out. The first piece of advice was from a huge mentor of mine, my uncle Wayne. And I remember I was having a conversation with him once. And it was one of these conversations, it was early hours in the morning, you know, we had been out, we had a great night, and we were just winding down. And I would imagine if I looked at the scene now, I could picture it, there was probably a couple of glasses of rum and coke, and we were sat there, we were finishing the evening off. And we were talking about truth and being truthful. And where's that balance between being truthful and holding stuff back for ourselves? Now, I'm going to connect this to yoga philosophy, because in part of yogic philosophy, we have something called satya, which is like truthfulness. And sometimes what we hear is, it's really important that we're truthful, that we're always truthful, that we always tell the truth. And that's great, and that really resonates with me, because I'm all about truth. I don't like telling lies. I like people to know. It just feels right. Mm-hmm. I don't like to deceive people. It's not my bag. But what Satya talks about is we need to. Have you ever heard of the yogic philosophy, part of yogic philosophy called ahimsa?
No.
It's called it's non-harming. So it was the sort of cornerstone of how Mahatma Gandhi used to live his life. And of course, you know, his main weapon against the British Empire was like non-violence, non-harming. Mm-hmm. All sort of starts with self, non-harming of self, but then also others and out into the world. So I like to think about truthfulness as this. When we're thinking about, say you're having a difficult conversation and you're thinking, I've got this thing and I need to tell someone about it. Now I think about, is this going to harm them? And if it's going to harm them, maybe I think twice about it. So the reason I'm bringing this in, this yogic philosophy, is that when me and my uncle were having this conversation, we both came to the conclusion that actually it's very, very important to be truthful, but be truthful in a way that doesn't harm others. And that might mean that we always have to keep something back for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then in doing that, we keep a bit of ourselves.
Yeah.
There are some people, what I'm saying, there are some people that just feel they have to tell everything, everyone everything.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you everything. Everything. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. It's like, come on. Mm-hmm. You know, in doing that, what are you doing? Are you freeing yourself? but in hurting others. Do
Mm.
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I'd say that's a piece of advice. Maybe it was some advice from my uncle, but at the same time we had this conversation, and through that conversation, and that's always stuck with me. I always think about, I'm very, very truthful, but I always think about, okay, do, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
So that, and I would, yeah, that's important. And also the best piece of advice, and sometimes advice doesn't come from someone saying, I've got some advice for you. Like, I'm thinking, you know, sit down, boy, I've got some advice for you. Now listen up. Listen up. Are you listening? It's watching people alive in the world. You know, I've had many, many mentors around me as men, growing up as young boys. I've got, you know, 2 fathers. I've got uncles. I've had teachers. But I think about my dad and him and his hard work ethic. One of the hardest working men that I know, and very, very truthful. And he always used to talk about telling the truth. He always used to talk about telling the truth. I'm coming back to truth again. Always used to talk about telling the truth, but integrity. And I guess he always spoke about his. So yeah, it's not about his. It's about advice he gave me through action. I always used to see him, and this makes you feel very safe as a child growing up in the world, where you see your parents and whatever they say they're going to do, they do.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely priceless as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I think about children who don't have that, and it's unsettling, and it creates a very nice foundation. I feel very grateful to have had that, and that's what I want to give my children and any children that I work with, or any relationships I'm in, I guess. Integrity, you know, what you say you're going to do is what you're going to do. You know, people start to become reliant on your word. You know, it's very old school, isn't it? But at the same time, and I did a vlog about this the other day, I think it's important that we need to get to a space where we can let people down if we need to. Because otherwise, you know, we might overcommit and get burnt out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Find that balance.
Yes. If you had the opportunity to speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you say?
Hello, Marvin. Is that you? Yeah. Who's that? It's me, 41-year-old Marvin. What would I say? I think I would say, don't worry. I would say, trust yourself. Because when I was 20 years old, I didn't trust myself. Like, I was very unsure of myself. I wasn't very comfortable in my own skin. And I was very much looking outside in the world, like, who do I need to be to fit in? I would just say, dude, just fucking trust yourself. You're perfect the way that you are. Yeah. Just trust yourself. Whatever feelings you have, talk about them in conversation. You know, and rather than thinking, oh, I better not say this because maybe it won't be cool or accepted. Just say it.
Yeah.
Because that's how you become.
That's great advice. Love it.
Yeah.
If you could change anything in the world, what would it be and why?
Wow, what a question. Equality is very important to me. I don't like human beings being in pain, and I don't like, you know, so I guess I would like it to be a more even playing field, you know, for, you know, when it comes to race, and, you know, and men and women and, you know, where we're born and, you know, in which countries we're born in. Yeah, come on, you know, let's share the wealth. Do you know what I mean? So if there was anything I could change in the world, I guess it would be that.
Yeah.
I'd love it for, I mean, being someone who's come from a place, from a very affluent, from the Thames Valley and from a very affluent time, I'd love other children to experience that. So if there was any way, and there are lots of people trying to do that, yeah, I guess that would be it, really. Get rid of all the evil bastards, you know?
Yeah.
The horrible bastards.
Yeah.
You know. There always has to be the yin and yang, I guess, but
yes.
I don't like people who aren't kind. Well, I don't like bullying, Elliot. fucking hate bullying.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one thing I'm very calm and I'm not very angry, but bullying gets me very, very angry. Angry in a way that I just want to the problem is with bullying, of course, is that usually people who are bullying have been bullied themselves.
Yes.
And everybody has probably been bullied or bullied in some capacity. You know, but I don't like bullying. I hate it, and if I see it, I want to diffuse it, and I will. If I see it out there, I'll go and speak it out. I will. I've tried to. I think we need to do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. People get scared. I better not do this in case something happens to me. Go and say something. Go and stick up for your fellow human beings. You know, let's support each other. You know, let's get rid of it, because that's how it used to be. Well, it didn't used to happen as much, but now it happens everywhere. Seriously,
I know.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. But I think that's part of it is perhaps the sort of political correctness gone wrong, and certainly in generations before us, the people that were more mature and older were able to say to younger people, "Don't do that," and the younger people would listen. But there seems to have been a sort of shift whereby the younger people feel as though they're the ones with the power and the older people are just old. You know?
Yeah.
But I think we need to kind of readdress what's kind of going on, because the whole idea of political correctness is kind of, the pendulum swung too far. And if you do see something like what you're saying, you should be able to kind of call it out.
Yeah. Can I tell you a very short story?
Certainly.
Yeah. And it always makes me laugh. I've got a friend of mine. I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a massive big guy. You know, he's about 6'3", 6'4". He's an ex-rugby player, about the same age as me. He's one of the biggest men you ever see in your life. And he's well-read, he's super educated, he's a very beautiful man, very kind, very calm. And so he was on a bus once, a London bus, and he told me this story, and he had been out training. He had his little shorts on, and he was sat there for a whacking great novel, reading it at the back of the bus. And there's a group of like 15, 20 lads, you know, I was about to say caps on then. Group of young lads, and I think he got onto the bus, and when he sat down, he was like, oh God, he just knew they were going to start like laying into him.
Yeah.
And he just started, and so straight away, like all the comments started coming. Oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, and he looks a bit like Dolph Lundgren.
Oh yeah.
Ivan Drago in, you know, remember that? Yeah. So he's like, oh, God. So he keeps his head down. They keep going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And in the end, he's like, oh God, and he almost had to he had to get up to get off his bus, and I think that he hates this as well. He's someone who has real good values. He hates bullying. You know, if he sees it, he'll speak it out, and I love that about him. And these lads were gonna. He actually felt for a moment that they were gonna physically come for him. So he thought, I've got to do something. And I think that he thought to himself, if I get off of the bus and don't do anything, they're going to get stuck into someone else that maybe can't look after themselves as well as I can.
Yeah.
So he got up and he walked to the back of the bus and he stood there and he said, right. He said, we're all getting off the bus together, and because they were going to follow him off. And he said, I'm just going to tell you this now. You can do whatever you want, but I'll tell you this now. If you all come at me, I'm going to kill one of you. You know, and I love that, because and they all just shut up, because they didn't expect that. They didn't expect him to stand up for himself. You know, so I'm not for a moment here advocating violence at all. That's not my point. My point is that I think we need to stand up for ourselves. You know, in a skillful way. Do you know what I mean? And we need to do that together. And the problem is, because we're not, and because we're cowering away. What we're saying to people is it's okay for us to verbally and physically abuse people, and that's not okay. It's not okay. And do you know what? It's not one of the reasons that I do jiu-jitsu, but I think that for me, jiu-jitsu gives me more of a confidence in the world. That I think that as I move through my jiu-jitsu journey, if ever I was in a situation where I saw someone being bullied, and together as a group of people, that we couldn't with language diffuse it and get this person out of the situation, and I had to physically, like hold someone down or do something, I could. You know, and that's the great thing about jiu-jitsu. You don't have to hurt anyone. You can just submit them. You can hold them there while you wait for the police. And yeah, so yeah, that's one of the reasons, I guess. Yeah, I don't like violence, man. I don't like violence. I don't know who this quote is from. I don't know if it's from Bruce Lee, but it's definitely from a martial arts master. I think it was from Bruce Lee. I was reading one of his books or an interview, and he was talking about, you know, how do you describe someone who's mastered martial arts? And he was like, well, it's in their ability to be able to diffuse violence with the use of language. And a real martial artist will never have to use, you know, their physical attributes. And I had quite a few conversations with people who are into martial arts who are into martial arts properly as a spiritual practice and what I believe it to be for me. And it's like none of them are violent. They're not violent people. Not violent in any way. They're the kindest, most gentle people you'll ever meet. But if it goes off and they need to protect themselves or their loved ones, then they will. But they'll only ever do it if they need to. You know?
But that probably, again, sort of stems from the confidence that they have in their ability. It's people who are underconfident and feel threatened, that feel as though they have to act, you know, bigger or harder than they actually are. It's an insecurity thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that because you train and you're surrounded by violence, you realise that actually it's not nice. It's not nice, and it's like, why would you want to do it? Why would you not just want to talk to someone? And actually, oh my God, you know what? The beauty in being able to diffuse a situation, and if someone's really going off on one, and sitting them down and saying, what is this really about? And being able to say, come on, you know, and getting around it. And then through it, you open up a dialogue and suddenly you're connecting. And you realise that they're just in pain. And it's just anger being expressed. It's like vulnerability, pain being expressed it's frustration. I imagine if that's the case for a lot of men. You know, I bet it is, you know, from like they've got some emotional stuff going on in their life and they're drunk and they go out and they kick off. And it's not because they're angry with the person they're fighting with, it's because of something going on in their personal life. That's all it is. So then we see the strain of that in the A&E room, don't we? Every Friday and Saturday night, I guess.
Marvin, I've absolutely loved speaking with you. It's been a brilliant interview. I hope that I've done you justice. I hope that we've covered everything that you kind of wanted to get out. And yeah, it's been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for coming up.
Mate, thank you. I've really, really enjoyed this.
Have you?
I've enjoyed sitting and talking to you, and time has flown by. I don't even know what we've talked about. And that's when you know you've had a good conversation, don't you? So thank you so much for having me here. It's beautiful to be here in this wonderful space, and yeah, such a delight.
It's been honestly an absolute pleasure. And I wish you all the best in your journey, and definitely keep in touch and see where you go with it.
Thank you so much.
Marvin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.